A human warship appeared on their sensors. What happened next terrified them, Admiral. Keithvar's four eyes focused on the holographic display floating before his command chair. The bridge of the hegemony dreadnought Eternal Dominance hummed with quiet efficiency as his crew monitored the outer rim territories. For 3 cycles, they had been conducting routine patrols in this forgotten sector of space, ensuring the primitive species remained in their designated zones. Admiral, Communications Officer Zeftal called out, her voice carrying the melodic tones typical of her species. We're receiving a distress signal from the mining colony on Kepler 442b. Kethavar's mandibles clicked in mild annoyance. The human settlement on that rock had been nothing but trouble, since the hegemony had graciously allowed them to establish their pathetic mining operation. Humans were barely tolerated in galactic society, a young species that had only achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. Most civilized races considered them little more than clever animals. What's their complaint this time? He asked, settling back into his chair. The last distress call had been about equipment failures. Before that, some nonsense about pirates. Humans always seem to find new ways to create problems for themselves. They claim they're under attack by unknown vessels, Zeftal reported, her tone suggesting she found the report as dubious as her commander. 3 ships, they say. The humans are requesting immediate assistance. A chorus of amused chittering arose from various crew members across the bridge. The idea that anyone would waste resources attacking a human mining colony was absurd. What could they possibly have worth stealing? Their technology was primitive, their weapons laughable, and their strategic value non-existent. Probably pirates looking for easy salvage, muttered Tactical Officer Vrexhan from his station. Humans panic at the first sign of trouble. Remember the incident at Proxima Station? They called for help because their food synthesizers malfunctioned. Kethvar was about to dismiss the distress call entirely when his sensor operator, a young Thexarian named Jolmek, suddenly straightened at his console. The junior officer's scales had shifted to a pale blue, a clear sign of confusion or alarm. Admiral, I'm detecting something unusual, Jolmek said, his voice uncertain. There's a ship approaching the human colony, but the signature doesn't match anything in our databases. This caught Kethvar's attention. The hegemony maintained the most comprehensive ship registry in known space. Every vessel from every member species was catalogued and tracked. Nothing flew through space without the hegemony knowing about it. Run it again, he ordered. Check for sensor malfunctions. All systems are functioning normally, sir. The ship is definitely there, but its design is unprecedented. The energy readings are inconsistent with known propulsion systems. Kethavar rose from his chair and moved to the sensor station. The holographic display showed the familiar cluster of rocks and debris that surrounded the human mining colony. 3 small ships, clearly pirate vessels based on their crude modifications, circled the settlement like scavengers. But approaching from the outer system was something else entirely. The ship was massive, easily twice the size of his own dreadnought. Its hull configuration was unlike anything he had ever seen. Angular and aggressive, bristling with weapon emplacements that seemed to defy conventional placement strategies. The energy signature was completely alien, pulsing with power levels that should have been impossible for a ship of that size. Could it be a new hegemony prototype? Suggested Vrexhan, though his tone lacked conviction. Negative, Kethvar replied, studying the readings more carefully. I would have been informed of any experimental vessels in this sector. Besides, look at the design philosophy. This isn't built using any known engineering principles. As they watched, the mysterious vessel continued its approach toward the besieged human colony. The 3 pirate ships seemed oblivious to its presence, continuing their lazy orbital pattern around the mining station. The humans' distress calls had become increasingly frantic, though their primitive weapons were having little effect on their attackers. Sir, Zeftal interrupted. The unknown vessel is hailing the pirate ships. Put it through, Kethavar ordered. Curiosity overriding protocol. The bridge speakers crackled to life, and a voice emerged that sent an involuntary shiver through every crew member present. It was unmistakably human, but there was something different about it. Where human voices were typically soft and fragile sounding, this one carried an edge of cold authority that seemed to cut through the vacuum of space itself. Attention, hostile vessels. You are attacking a human settlement under the protection of the Terran Federation Navy. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. The bridge fell silent. Terran Federation Navy? No such organization existed in any hegemony records. Humans barely had a unified planetary government, let alone a space navy worthy of the name. One of the pirate captains responded with the typical bravado of his kind. "This is our salvage operation, human. Your little colony has no protection here. Crawl back to whatever hole you came from before we add your ship to our collection." What happened next would be burned into Kethvar's memory for the rest of his life. The human ship didn't respond with words. Instead, weapons ports along its hull opened with mechanical precision, revealing rows of weapon systems that defied immediate classification. Energy readings spiked to levels that made the sensor console emit warning alerts. The first pirate ship simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, transmitting threats and moving to intercept the human vessel. The next there was nothing but expanding clouds of superheated plasma where it had been. No explosion, no debris field, just complete and instantaneous annihilation. The second pirate ship tried to flee. Its engines flared to life as the captain desperately attempted to reach jump distance. The human warship fired again. Not the same weapon this time, but something that seemed to reach across space and grip the fleeing vessel. The pirate ship stopped dead in space, its engines overloading in bright flashes before the entire vessel crumpled inward like a crushed insect. The third pirate captain, showing more wisdom than his companions, immediately powered down all weapons and began broadcasting surrender signals. The human ship held its fire but maintained weapons lock. "This system is now under Terran Federation protection," the human voice announced calmly, as if obliterating 2 warships was routine business. "Any further hostile actions against human settlements will be met with immediate and overwhelming force." Admiral Kethvar stared at the tactical display in stunned silence. In 30 years of military service, he had never seen weapons of such devastating efficiency. The hegemony's own dreadnoughts were considered the pinnacle of military technology, yet this single human vessel had just demonstrated firepower that made his flagship seem like a child's toy. "Admiral," Jolmik whispered, his scales now a deep purple indicating fear. Should we make contact?" Kethvar's mind raced through the implications of what he had just witnessed. If humans possessed this level of technology, why had they hidden it? Why continue the pretense of being a primitive species barely worthy of hegemony notice? And more importantly, how many more ships like this did they have? "No," he said finally, his voice barely audible. "Set course away from this system." "Best possible speed, sir." "Now, officer. And classify this entire encounter at the highest security level. No one speaks of what we've seen here without my direct authorization." As the eternal dominance began its retreat, Kethvar continued to stare at the human warship on his screens. Somewhere in the depths of space, humanity had been building, planning, preparing, and the galaxy had no idea what was coming. 3 days after the incident at Kepler 442b, the Hegemony High Council convened an emergency session. The great crystalline chamber on the capital world of Nexus Prime buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from dozens of species gathered around the central speaking platform. Admiral Kethvar stood before them, his official report floating as holographic text above the assembly. Chancellor Thisara, the ancient ethereal who had led the council for over 2 centuries, fixed her luminous eyes on the admiral. Her translucent form shimmered, with barely contained agitation as she spoke, in the harmonic frequencies that served as the council's common language. "You claim to have witnessed a single human vessel, destroy 2 pirate ships with weapons technology, beyond our current understanding," she said, her tone carrying the weight of disbelief. "This conflicts with everything we know about human capabilities." Representative Kalmtar of the Vrexian Empire leaned forward in his mechanical exoskeleton, servos whirring as he gestured dismissively. "Perhaps our admiral's sensors were compromised. Humans are scavengers and miners at best. They lack the industrial capacity for advanced weapons development." Admiral Kethvar's mandibles tightened. He had expected skepticism, but not outright dismissal of his first-hand account. "Honored council members, I understand how this report must sound. However, I have 23 crew members who witnessed the same events. Our sensor logs have been verified by 3 independent technical teams." "Show us," demanded Councillor Vexman, her serpentine form coiling with interest. As head of Hegemony Intelligence, she had access to information that often contradicted official records. The chamber's central display activated, projecting the sensor recordings from the encounter. The assembled representatives watched in silence as the massive human warship appeared on screen, its weapon systems charged with energies that made their most advanced instruments strain to measure. The destruction of the first pirate vessel drew gasps from several council members. The complete annihilation was unlike anything in recorded galactic warfare. When the second ship crumpled under what appeared to be a gravitational weapon, even the most skeptical representatives began shifting uncomfortably in their seats. "This technology," whispered Dr. Calveth, the Council's chief scientific advisor, "it operates on principles we don't understand. The energy-to-mass conversion ratios alone should be impossible with current physics models." Chancellor Thisara raised a crystalline hand for silence. "Admiral Kethavar, in your assessment, was this vessel representative of human military capabilities, or could it have been an isolated prototype?" Kethavar had been dreading this question because his answer would change everything. "Based on the crew's discipline and the ship's operational efficiency, I believe this represents standard Terran Federation Navy capabilities. The way they responded to the situation suggested routine military procedure, not experimental testing." The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives began speaking over each other in multiple languages, their translators struggling to keep pace with the flood of concerned voices. The economic implications alone were staggering. If humans possessed superior military technology, the entire balance of galactic trade would shift overnight. "Order." Chancellor Thisara's harmonic voice cut through the noise like a blade. "We will address this systematically. Representative Mothin, what are your current intelligence reports on human activities?" The hegemony's head of xenobiological affairs, an insectoid creature whose compound eyes reflected the chamber's light in prismatic patterns, consulted his datapad with visible nervousness. "Our most recent surveys indicated standard industrial development, mining operations, basic manufacturing, limited shipyard capacity, nothing that would suggest advanced weapons research." "Then how do you explain what we've just seen?" demanded Councillor Vexman. "I cannot," Mothin admitted, his antennae drooping in confusion. Dr. Calveth had been analyzing the sensor data throughout the discussion. Now he stood, his tall frame casting shadows across the crystalline floor. "Council members, I've been studying these weapon signatures. The first attack appears to utilize controlled antimatter reactions, but with containment technology far beyond our capabilities. The second weapon, I believe it's some form of artificial gravity manipulation." "Impossible," scoffed Representative Kolumtar. "Gravity manipulation requires massive installations. No ship-mounted system could generate those effects." "And yet we've seen it done," Dr. Calveth replied grimly, "which suggests human technology has advanced far beyond our estimates. The question becomes, what else are they hiding?" Chancellor Thisara's form flickered as she processed the implications. The hegemony had built its power on technological superiority. Member species contributed resources and labor in exchange for access to advanced systems and protection from external threats. If humans had independently developed superior technology, the entire foundation of galactic civilization was at risk. "We need more information," she declared. "Admiral Kethvar, I'm authorizing a covert reconnaissance mission to human space. Use unmarked vessels and maintain strict observation protocols. We need to understand the scope of their capabilities." "Chancellor," interrupted a new voice from the chamber's upper galleries. All eyes turned toward Representative Quindar of the Merchant Guild, whose economic analyses often proved more accurate than military intelligence. "Before we commit to potentially hostile reconnaissance, perhaps we should consider diplomatic contact. If humans have developed advanced technology independently, they may be open to trade negotiations." "Trade?" Representative Kolumtar's mechanical voice carried obvious disdain. "These primitives have nothing we need, and if they're hiding military capabilities, they're clearly planning something aggressive." Councillor Vexman's serpentine form coiled tighter around her speaking platform. "Intelligence suggests otherwise. Recent monitoring of human communication networks indicates significant resource allocation toward what they term deep space exploration. This could be expansion preparation." The implications hung heavy in the chamber's recycled atmosphere. If humans were planning expansion beyond their current territory, their hidden military capabilities took on a much more threatening aspect. The established order that had maintained galactic peace for centuries could collapse if a new power emerged with superior technology and aggressive intentions. Admiral Kethover found himself in the uncomfortable position of being the only council advisor with first-hand knowledge of human military capability. Honored counsel, in my professional opinion, open diplomacy may be our safest option. The human ship I encountered could have easily destroyed my dreadnought if they had chosen to do so. Instead, they ignored our presence entirely. This suggests their intentions may not be immediately hostile, or they're waiting to reveal their full strength until they're ready to strike, countered Representative Kalmtar. Surprise attacks are the hallmark of primitive species seeking to upset established order. Dr. Calveth had been quietly analyzing additional data streams throughout the debate. Now he stood again, his expression grave. Council members, I've been reviewing historical human technological development patterns. Over the past 50 years, their advancement rate has been exponential rather than linear. What we interpreted as typical post-FTL development may actually represent deliberate misdirection. You're suggesting they've been deceiving us? Chancellor Thaisara's harmonic voice carried dangerous undertones. I'm suggesting they may have been protecting themselves, Dr. Calveth replied carefully. Consider their position. A young species surrounded by established powers with vastly superior fleets. Concealing advanced capabilities until they achieved strategic parity would be logical. The chamber fell silent as the assembled representatives contemplated this possibility. The idea that humans had been systematically deceiving the hegemony for decades challenged every assumption about their nature and capabilities. Finally, Chancellor Thaisara spoke. We will proceed with caution. Admiral Kethvar, your reconnaissance mission is approved, but with modified parameters. Observe only. Under no circumstances are you to engage human vessels or enter their territorial space without explicit authorization from this council. And if they detect our surveillance? Admiral Kethvar asked. The Chancellor's crystalline form dimmed slightly as she considered the question. Then we may discover just how advanced their technology really is, and whether humanity represents an opportunity for alliance, or a threat that must be eliminated before it grows beyond our ability to contain. As the council session concluded, and representatives began filing out through the chamber's multiple exits, none noticed the small monitoring device hidden among the crystalline formations overhead. The device had been recording everything, transmitting encrypted data to a receiver stationed 3 light-years away. Aboard the cloaked human observation ship, Silent Watcher, Commander Sarah Chen reviewed the council session recordings with professional interest. The hegemony's reaction had proceeded exactly as the Terran Strategic Command had predicted. Fear, followed by skepticism, followed by the inevitable decision to gather more intelligence. Chen activated her secure communication array and began compos. Commander Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of the Terran Federation Starbase Olympus, watching construction crews put the finishing touches on humanity's newest dreadnought. The massive vessel stretched for 3 kilometers, its hull adorned with weapon systems that would have been considered science fiction just 50 years ago. Through the transparent aluminum viewports, she could see dozens of similar ships in various stages of completion. Impressive sight, isn't it? Came a voice behind her. Elena turned to see Admiral Marcus Chen approaching, his weathered face bearing the confident expression that had made him legendary among human naval officers. As Supreme Commander of the Terran Federation Navy, he was one of the few people who knew the full scope of humanity's preparations for what they termed the revealing. The Prometheus-class ships still amaze me, Elena replied, gesturing toward the nearest dreadnought. 40 years of secret development, and we've built a fleet that could reshape galactic politics overnight. Admiral Chen joined her at the viewport, his hands clasped behind his back in the parade rest position that had become automatic after 4 decades of military service. The irony is that we originally built them for defense. The hegemony made it clear that humans were considered second-class citizens in their galactic order. We decided to ensure we had options if that situation became untenable. Elena nodded, remembering her own recruitment into the clandestine naval program. Like most officers, she had been approached during her service with the public fleet, the deliberately primitive-looking vessels that maintained humanity's facade of technological mediocrity. The transition to seeing humanity's true capabilities had been staggering. Admiral, Intelligence reports indicate the Hegemony Council authorized reconnaissance missions into our space. Admiral Kethvar's encounter at Kepler 442b has them thoroughly spooked. As intended, Chen replied with a slight smile. Captain Harrison's performance was exemplary. Destroy the pirates with overwhelming force, demonstrate clear technological superiority, then withdraw without engaging the Hegemony observer. It sent exactly the message we wanted. The plan had been years in the making. Humanity's intelligence networks had identified Admiral Kethvar as a competent officer, whose reports would be taken seriously by the Hegemony Council. The pirate attack on the mining colony had provided the perfect opportunity to reveal a fraction of human capabilities in a context that would seem defensive rather than aggressive. What's our response when their reconnaissance ships arrive? Elena asked. Admiral Chen's expression became more serious. That depends on how they approach it. If they send unmarked vessels attempting covert surveillance, we'll let them gather limited intelligence before revealing we've been tracking them all along. If they come openly seeking diplomatic contact, we'll engage formally and begin Phase 2. Phase 2 would change everything. For 50 years, humanity had maintained the illusion of being a minor spacefaring species, struggling to establish a foothold in galactic civilization. In reality, human colonies now extended across 43 star systems, connected by a network of quantum communication relays that allowed instantaneous coordination across interstellar distances. Admiral, Elena said carefully, some of the civilian leadership are concerned about the risks. If the Hegemony perceives us as a threat, they have the numerical advantage. Hundreds of species, thousands of worlds. Numbers matter less than technology and tactics, Chen replied. We've spent decades studying their military doctrine, their ship designs, their strategic thinking. They've been fighting the same way for centuries, massive fleets using overwhelming firepower against primitive opponents. They have no experience with asymmetric warfare or advanced stealth capabilities. This was true, but Elena still felt the weight of responsibility that came with potentially triggering an interstellar conflict. Humanity's hidden fleet numbered only 300 ships, compared to the Hegemony's estimated 50,000 vessels. However, those 300 ships incorporated technology that made each one equivalent to an entire Hegemony battle group. The quantum entanglement communication system activated, filling the observation deck with the soft chime that indicated an incoming priority message. Admiral Chen moved to the nearest terminal and input his authorization codes. Admiral Chen, this is Commander Sarah aboard the Silent Watcher. The Hegemony Council session proceeded exactly as predicted. They're authorizing reconnaissance missions and debating whether to attempt diplomatic contact or treat us as a potential threat. Elena moved closer to hear the transmission clearly. Commander Sarah Chen, the Admiral's daughter, had been running deep cover operations in Hegemony space for 3 years, using advanced cloaking technology to monitor their activities undetected. Any indication of their timeline? Admiral Chen asked. Intelligence suggests Admiral Kethvar will lead the reconnaissance mission personally. ETA to our outer territories is approximately 10 days. Additionally, there are concerning developments. Some council members are advocating for preemptive action if we're deemed a sufficient threat. This was the scenario humanity had hoped to avoid. If the Hegemony decided to strike first, the carefully planned revelation would become a desperate defensive war. Admiral Chen's expression hardened as he processed the implications. Sarah, maintain your position and continue monitoring. If they move toward military action, I want advance warning. Elena, activate the fleet. Elena felt her pulse quicken. Activating the fleet meant bringing all human naval assets to combat readiness, a process that would be visible to any sufficiently advanced sensors monitoring human space. There would be no hiding their capabilities once the fleet went active. All ships, Admiral? Every vessel we have. If the Hegemony wants to discover our true strength, they're going to get a comprehensive demonstration. As Elena began transmitting activation codes to fleet commanders across human space, she reflected on the strange position humanity found itself in. They had spent half a century building defensive capabilities while hoping never to use them. Now circumstances were forcing their hand. The irony was that humanity's technological advancement had been driven primarily by necessity rather than aggression. When the first human explorers encountered the Hegemony's rigid caste system, where species were ranked by technological sophistication, and military power, they realized that Earth's children would need to be stronger than they appeared to survive in galactic civilization. The breakthrough had come through humanity's greatest strength, adaptability. While other species specialized in particular technologies, humans had developed broad-spectrum capabilities. They learned to integrate exotic matter manipulation, quantum computing, artificial gravity generation, and antimatter containment into ship designs that could match or exceed anything the galaxy had seen. "Admiral," Elena reported, "fleet activation is complete. All ships report ready status. Additionally, the defense platforms around our core worlds have powered up their primary weapon systems. These platforms represented humanity's ultimate deterrent, massive installations capable of generating energy outputs comparable to small stars. Each one could eliminate entire fleets, but their existence remained humanity's most closely guarded secret." Admiral Chen studied the tactical display, showing human ship positions throughout their territory. The sight would have shocked any hegemony observer. What appeared to be a minor species barely capable of interstellar travel had secretly built a military infrastructure that could threaten the established galactic order. "Send a message to all colony worlds," he ordered. "Initiate Protocol 7. Civilian populations are to be prepared for possible evacuation to the deep colonies." Protocol 7 represented humanity's ultimate fallback position. If the situation deteriorated beyond recovery, essential personnel and genetic samples would be evacuated to secret colonies in previously unexplored regions of space. Humanity would survive even if Earth itself fell. Elena initiated the protocol transmission, knowing that across human space, families would soon be making difficult decisions about whether to flee to safety or remain to defend their homes. It was a choice no species should have to make, but humanity had learned long ago that survival often required impossible decisions. "Admiral, what if the hegemony chooses diplomacy over confrontation?" Elena asked. Admiral Chen considered this possibility. "Then we'll have the most interesting first contact scenario in galactic history. A species they considered primitive revealing that they've secretly become a major power. It could lead to genuine cooperation, or make them even more determined to eliminate what they perceive as a threat." The quantum communicator activated again, this time with an emergency priority signal. Admiral Chen immediately authorized the connection, and Commander Sarah's voice filled the deck with unmistakable urgency. "Admiral, the situation has escalated. The Hegemony Council just authorized Admiral Kethvar to make contact using whatever means he deems necessary. However, Representative Kalmtar is simultaneously deploying a battle fleet to the border regions. They're preparing for both diplomacy and war." Elena felt the weight of history settling on her shoulders. In the next few days, humanity would either take its place as an equal partner in galactic civilization or find itself fighting for survival against. Admiral Kethavar's reconnaissance fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of human territory, their sensors immediately beginning passive scans of the seemingly empty space before them. The fleet consisted of 5 ships, 3 destroyers, 1 cruiser, and his flagship, the dreadnought Eternal Dominance. All vessels had been equipped with the most advanced stealth systems the hegemony possessed. "Sensor report," Kethvar ordered as his crew took their stations. "Multiple energy signatures detected throughout the system," reported Sensor Officer Jolmek, his voice tight with concentration. "Admiral, the readings are extensive. Far more activity than our intelligence suggested." Kethvar moved to the sensor station, studying the holographic display that showed dozens of contacts scattered across the star system. What disturbed him most was the organized nature of the energy signatures. This wasn't random civilian traffic, but clear evidence of coordinated military deployment. "How many ships are we detecting?" he asked. "At least 40 vessels in this system alone, sir, and the energy outputs. Some of these signatures are larger than anything in our databases." Before Kethavar could respond, his communications officer straightened at her station. "Admiral, we're being hailed. The transmission is coming from everywhere." "Explain." "The signal is being broadcast simultaneously from multiple sources throughout the system. It's as if the entire region is networked together." Kethavar felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. A networked defense system of this sophistication suggested planning and resources far beyond what humans were supposed to possess. "Put it through," The bridge speakers activated, and a calm human voice filled the command center. Admiral Kethvar, of the hegemony vessel, Eternal Dominance, welcome to the Terran Federation border region. I am Admiral Marcus Chen, Supreme Commander of the Terran Federation Navy. We've been expecting you. The casual mention of his name and ship sent shock waves through Kethvar's crew. Their stealth systems were supposedly undetectable, yet humans had not only spotted them but identified his flagship specifically. "This is Admiral Kethvar," he replied, fighting to keep his voice steady. "I am conducting a routine patrol mission in neutral space. Admiral, with respect, you are currently within Terran Federation territorial boundaries using cloaked vessels in what appears to be a surveillance mission. While we appreciate the hegemony's interest in our activities, we would prefer more direct communication." Kethvar's tactical officer, Vrexhan, was frantically checking their position readings. "Sir, according to our charts, this is neutral space. Humans have no territorial claims in this region." Admiral Chen's voice continued as if he had heard the exchange. "I understand there may be some confusion regarding territorial boundaries. Our expansion over the past 30 years has been significant. Perhaps a meeting would clarify the current situation. You are welcome to approach our border station coordinates, which I am transmitting now." The implications hit Kethvar like a physical blow. Expansion over 30 years? Human. Territory extending far beyond hegemony records? Either their intelligence was catastrophically flawed, or humanity had been conducting the largest deception in galactic history. "Admiral," Sensor Officer Jomek whispered, "I'm detecting massive structures throughout this system. Space stations, orbital installations, what appear to be defensive platforms. The scale is unprecedented." "Put it on the main display," Kethvar ordered. The bridge's primary viewer activated, showing a detailed scan of the nearest installation. What they saw defied belief. The structure was enormous, larger than most planetary cities, and bristled with weapon emplacements that dwarfed anything in the hegemony arsenal. Energy readings suggested power generation capabilities that should have required an entire moon to house. "How many installations like this are in the system?" Kethvar asked. "I count at least 12 major installations, sir, plus numerous smaller platforms and what appear to be mobile defense units." Vrexhan had been analyzing the weapon signatures from the installations. "Admiral, these energy patterns, they're similar to what we observed at Kepler 442b, but scaled up by orders of magnitude. A single one of those platforms could eliminate our entire fleet." The communication channel activated again. "Admiral Kethvar, we understand this may be overwhelming. The Terran Federation has invested considerable resources in ensuring our security. We would welcome the opportunity to discuss the current galactic situation with hegemony representatives in a more formal setting." Kethvar realized he was facing a decision that would affect the course of galactic history. He could retreat and report what he had seen, triggering a potential military response from the hegemony. Or he could accept the humans' invitation and potentially open diplomatic channels that might prevent a catastrophic conflict. "Admiral Chen, I accept your invitation to meet. However, I must inform you that any hostile action against hegemony vessels will be considered an act of war." "Understood completely, Admiral. We have no desire for conflict. Our defensive posture is purely precautionary. Please follow the navigation beacon we're transmitting." As Kethvar's fleet began moving toward the indicated coordinates, he found himself studying the tactical display with growing amazement. The more his sensors revealed about human capabilities, the more he realized how completely the hegemony had underestimated this species. "Sir," Communications Officer Zeftal reported, "I'm detecting quantum entanglement communication networks throughout human space. They have instantaneous communication across interstellar distances." This was technology the hegemony had been attempting to develop for centuries without success. The strategic advantages of instantaneous communication across galactic distances were enormous. No more delayed orders, no communication blackouts during combat, perfect coordination of military operations. The navigation beacon led them toward a space station that gradually resolved on their screens as they approached. Kethvar had to suppress an involuntary sound of amazement. The station was a masterpiece of engineering. its organic curves and flowing lines suggesting construction methods far advanced beyond anything he had seen. Station configuration is unlike any known architecture, reported Rex Hahn. The design appears to optimize both defensive capabilities and docking facilities. I count berthing spaces for at least 100 ships of various classes. And the power readings? Kethavar asked. Comparable to a small planet, sir. Whatever. Their energy source, it's far beyond our current understanding. As they approached the docking facility, Kethavar noticed something that sent another shock through his system. Ships were emerging from what had appeared to be empty space, vessels uncloaking as they moved to flanking positions around his fleet. The humans had been tracking them with a vast network of cloaked ships. Admiral, Jolmec reported, I count 37 vessels now visible, with estimated additional units still cloaked. Ship designs are completely novel, but energy signatures suggest individual combat capability exceeding our dreadnought specifications. Admiral Chen's voice returned. Admiral Kethavar, the escorts are merely a precautionary measure. You'll find our docking bay can accommodate your entire fleet. We've prepared suitable atmospheric conditions for your crew. The casual reference to knowing their atmospheric requirements drove home yet another point. Human intelligence on hegemony species was far more comprehensive than anyone had realized. As the eternal dominance settled into the docking bay, Kethavar found himself studying the facility's construction. The technology was clearly advanced, but the design philosophy was distinctly human, practical, efficient, but with aesthetic elements that suggested these people built things to last for generations. Sir, Zeftel said quietly, what do we do if they demand territorial concessions, or if they issue ultimatums regarding hegemony policies? It was a question that had been troubling Kethavar since the moment he realized the scope of human capabilities. If humanity decided to challenge hegemony authority, they clearly had the technological means to make such a challenge effective. We listen, he replied, and we try to understand what they want. Because if these humans decide they want war, I'm not certain the hegemony can win it. As his crew prepared for what would likely be the most important diplomatic meeting in galactic history, Kethavar reflected on the bitter irony of the situation. The hegemony had spent centuries maintaining order through technological superiority and military strength. Now they were facing a species that had secretly surpassed them in both areas, while maintaining the pretense of weakness. The docking bay finished pressurizing, and Admiral Kethavar prepared to meet with representatives of a power that had emerged from the shadows to challenge the established order of the galaxy. As he gathered his diplomatic protocols and cultural briefings, he couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. Outside the viewports, human ships continued their silent patrols, their weapons powered but not targeted. Their message clear. The children of Earth were no longer asking for permission to exist in the galaxy. They were announcing their intention to help decide its future. The diplomatic meeting chamber aboard the human border station was unlike anything Admiral Kethavar had ever seen. Instead of the rigid formal arrangements typical of hegemony diplomatic facilities, the space felt organic and adaptable. Holographic displays could be configured in real time. Atmospheric conditions adjusted for multiple species simultaneously, and translation systems operated with a precision that captured not just words but emotional and cultural context. Admiral Marcus Chen entered the chamber with a small entourage, his bearing confident but not aggressive. Kethavar was surprised by the human's appearance. Where hegemony officers typically wore elaborate uniforms indicating rank and species affiliation, Chen's attire was practical and understated, marked only by simple insignia that spoke of function rather than ceremony. Admiral Kethavar, Chen said, extending his hand in the human gesture of greeting. Thank you for accepting our invitation. I hope your journey was informative. The comment about the journey being informative was clearly a reference to the overwhelming display of human military capability Kethavar had witnessed during his approach. It was diplomacy, but diplomacy backed by undeniable strength. Admiral Chen, Kethavar replied, studying the human's face for any sign of deception or hidden agenda. I confess that what we've observed challenges many of our assumptions about human capabilities. I imagine it does, Chen said, gesturing for everyone to take seats around a circular table that materialized from the floor. For 50 years, humanity has chosen to maintain a low profile in galactic affairs. Recent events have convinced us that this approach may no longer serve our interests or the interests of galactic stability. Kethvar's diplomatic advisor, a Thexarian named Pelmoth who specialized in xenopsychology, leaned forward slightly. Admiral Chen, the hegemony has always welcomed new species into galactic civilization. However, the apparent deception regarding human technological capabilities raises significant concerns about your intentions. Chen's expression remained neutral, but Kethvar detected a slight tightening around the human's eyes. Deception is a strong word, Advisor Pelmoth. Humanity has never misrepresented our capabilities. We simply haven't volunteered information that wasn't requested. When you encounter a civilization that classifies species by military power and considers some races inherently superior to others, discretion becomes a survival strategy. The words hung in the air like an accusation. Kethvar realized that Chen was politely but firmly criticizing the fundamental basis of hegemony civilization, the hierarchical system that had maintained galactic order for millennia. You object to the established galactic order? Kethvar asked carefully. We object to any system that limits a species' potential based on arbitrary measures of worthiness, Chen replied. Humanity has observed the hegemony's treatment of species classified as primitive or developing. We decided we preferred to avoid such classification. To demonstrate his point, Chen activated a holographic display showing a three-dimensional map of local galactic space. Kethvar was shocked to see the extent of human expansion. 43 star systems connected by what appeared to be a sophisticated infrastructure of space stations, mining operations, and defensive installations. This is your actual territory? Kethvar asked. Our current territory, Chen corrected. We've been expanding steadily for 30 years, always careful to avoid established trade routes or claimed systems. We have no desire for conflict with existing civilizations. Pelmoth was studying the display with obvious amazement. The logistics alone, coordinating operations across this distance would require communication technology beyond anything we've achieved. Quantum entanglement networks, Chen said simply. We can coordinate activities across our entire territory instantaneously. It's proven quite useful for both civilian administration and military operations. The casual mention of military applications sent a chill through Kethvar's spine. If humans could coordinate their forces across interstellar distances in real time, they possessed a strategic advantage that would be nearly impossible to counter. Admiral Chen, Kethvar said, I must ask directly. What are humanity's intentions regarding the hegemony and galactic civilization as a whole? Chen leaned back in his chair, studying the alien delegation with obvious calculation. We want recognition as equals, not subjects. We want trade relationships based on mutual benefit, not exploitation. And we want security guarantees that ensure our people can develop and prosper without fear of arbitrary intervention. And if the hegemony cannot provide these guarantees, Pelmoth asked, then we'll provide them ourselves, Chen replied. Admiral, we didn't reveal our capabilities to threaten anyone. We revealed them because recent events suggest that the current galactic order may not be stable. Pirates attacking mining colonies with impunity, border disputes escalating into military conflicts, entire species being classified as expandable based on technological assessments. These trends concern us. Kethvar realized that Chen was describing problems the hegemony had been struggling with for decades. The vast size of galactic civilization made effective policing nearly impossible, and member species had increasingly taken matters into their own hands when central authority proved inadequate. You're suggesting that humanity could help address these issues? Kethvar asked. We're suggesting that a partnership between equals might be more effective than the current system of hierarchical control, Chen said. Humanity has developed technologies and strategies that could benefit galactic civilization as a whole. In return, we seek recognition as a major power with legitimate interests in galactic affairs. The quantum communicator in Kethvar's uniform activated with an emergency signal. After requesting permission, he answered the call and immediately heard the voice of Chancellor Thisera herself. Admiral Kethvar, report your status immediately. Long-range sensors are detecting massive energy buildups throughout human space. Are you under threat? Kethvar looked at Admiral Chen, who nodded understanding. Chancellor, I am safe and engaged in diplomatic discussions with human leadership. The energy buildups are likely defensive preparations in response to our reconnaissance mission. Defensive preparations of what magnitude? The Chancellor demanded. Kethvar hesitated, knowing that his next words would change everything. Chancellor, human military capabilities appear to be significantly beyond our previous estimates. I recommend immediate diplomatic engagement rather than any military response. There was a long pause before the Chancellor replied. Admiral, the Council has authorized Representative Kalmtar to deploy a battle fleet to the border regions. They should arrive in your area within 6 hours. Chen's expression darkened and he activated his own communication device. All commands, this is Admiral Chen. Hegemony battle fleet inbound ETA 6 hours. Initiate condition red. Defensive positions only unless fired upon. Admiral Chen, Kethvar said urgently. Representative Kalmtar commands one of our most aggressive battle fleets. If he perceives a threat, he may attack without attempting communication. Then I suggest you convince your Chancellor to recall him, Chen replied. Because if a hegemony fleet opens fire on human vessels or installations, this situation will escalate beyond anyone's ability to control. To emphasize his point, Chen activated the chamber's main display, showing real-time tactical information from throughout human space. Hundreds of ships were moving to defensive positions, space-based weapon platforms were powering up, and what appeared to be massive installations were emerging from hidden locations throughout human territory. Admiral Kethvar, Chen said quietly, humanity doesn't want war. But we've spent 50 years preparing for the possibility that someone might force one upon us. If Representative Kalmtar attacks our territory, he'll discover that humans fight very differently than any enemy the hegemony has faced before. Kethvar activated his communicator again. Chancellor, I urgently recommend recalling Representative Kalmtar's fleet. Human defensive capabilities are extensive, and any military engagement could result in catastrophic losses. Impossible, came the Chancellor's reply. No single species could threaten a hegemony battle fleet. Chen gestured to his own communications officer, who activated a system that allowed the Chancellor to observe the tactical displays showing human military deployment. There was a long silence as the hegemony leader processed the scope of what she was seeing. These readings cannot be accurate, the Chancellor finally said. I'm afraid they are, Chen replied. Chancellor, humanity has no desire for conflict with the hegemony or any galactic civilization. However, we will defend our territory and our people with all available resources. I strongly recommend diplomatic resolution of this situation. Admiral Kethvar found himself in the unprecedented position of being a bridge between two potential superpowers, each capable of devastating the other. The next few hours would determine whether the galaxy faced a new era of cooperation or the most destructive war in its recorded history. Chancellor, he said, I request permission to continue diplomatic negotiations, while Representative Kalmtar's fleet maintains position outside human territory. Perhaps we can find a peaceful resolution that benefits everyone. The silence stretched for several moments before the Chancellor replied. Representative Kalmtar's battle fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a hammer falling from the sky. 57 ships arranged in perfect combat formation. Dreadnoughts, cruisers, destroyers, and support vessels representing the finest military technology the hegemony had developed over centuries of galactic dominance. As the fleet's sensors activated, Kalmtar expected to find a handful of primitive human vessels cowering behind inadequate defenses. Instead, his tactical display immediately filled with contacts that made no sense according to everything he knew about human capabilities. Tactical report, he ordered from his command throne aboard the super dreadnought Hegemony's Wrath. Sir, his tactical officer replied, voice tight with disbelief. I'm reading over 300 ships in defensive positions throughout this system. Energy signatures indicate individual vessel capabilities exceeding our estimates for primitive human technology. Impossible, Kalmtar snarled, his mechanical exoskeleton whirring as he leaned forward. Humans barely achieved spaceflight 50 years ago. Run full spectrum analysis. Sir, analysis confirms initial readings. Additionally, I'm detecting massive orbital installations with power outputs comparable to planetary defense platforms. Their weapons are charged but not targeted on our fleet. Before Kalmtar could respond, his communications officer activated the fleet channel. Sir, we're being hailed. The transmission is coming from Admiral Kethvar aboard the human border station. Put him through, Kalmtar ordered, his tone carrying dangerous undertones. Admiral Kethvar's voice filled the command bridge, and Kalmtar could hear the strain of someone trying to prevent a catastrophe. Representative Kalmtar, I urge extreme caution. Human defensive capabilities are far beyond our intelligence estimates. I am currently engaged in productive diplomatic negotiations that could resolve this situation peacefully. Admiral Kethvar, Kalmtar replied, you have been compromised by human deception. No primitive species could threaten hegemony forces. I am ordering you to withdraw to a safe distance while I deal with this situation. Representative Kalmtar, I strongly advise against any aggressive action. The humans have demonstrated technology that could. Kalmtar cut the transmission with an angry gesture. In his view, Admiral Kethvar had been clearly intimidated by human psychological warfare. Primitive species often tried to appear stronger than they were when faced with superior forces. All ships, assume attack formation, he ordered. Prepare to demonstrate proper galactic order to these upstart humans. Aboard the human border station, Admiral Chen received immediate notification of the hegemony fleet's aggressive deployment. The quantum communication network allowed him to monitor the situation in real time while continuing his negotiations with Admiral Kethvar. Admiral, Kethvar said urgently, Representative Kalmtar is not responding to diplomatic warnings. His tactical formation suggests he intends to attack. Chen activated his command interface, studying the tactical situation. The hegemony fleet was indeed powerful. Under normal circumstances, it could have overwhelmed any single planetary defense system. However, circumstances were no longer normal. Admiral Kethvar, can you maintain communication with your fleet commander? Limited communication, yes, but Kalmtar believes human capabilities are exaggerated. He's convinced this is elaborate deception. Chen nodded grimly. Then we'll have to provide a demonstration that dispels his misconceptions. I hope we can do so without unnecessary casualties. Chen activated the fleet communication network. All commands, this is Admiral Chen. Hegemony Battle Fleet has assumed attack formation. Implement Demonstration Protocol Alpha. Weapons free but target systems only. We want to disable, not destroy. Throughout human space, the defensive fleet moved with precision that would have impressed even seasoned military observers. Ships that had been concealed in asteroid fields and nebula clouds revealed themselves, while others emerged from what had appeared to be empty space. Orbital platforms realigned to bring weapons to bear, and defensive installations powered up energy systems that made the surrounding space glow with contained power. Kalmtar watched the tactical display with growing confusion as human contacts multiplied exponentially. What had appeared to be a modest defensive force was revealing itself as a military infrastructure of staggering scope. Sir, his tactical officer reported, voice now openly nervous. Contact count has increased to over 800 vessels, and the energy readings from those orbital platforms. Sir, individual platform output exceeds our dreadnought capabilities. Impossible, Kalmtar repeated, but with less conviction than before. No species could hide this level of military development. His communications officer suddenly straightened at her station. Sir, incoming transmission from the human fleet. It's being broadcast on all frequencies. Put it through. Admiral Chen's voice emerged from the speakers with calm authority. Representative Kalmtar, this is Admiral Marcus Chen, Supreme Commander of the Terran Federation Navy. You are currently within Terran territorial space with a battle fleet in attack formation. I am ordering you to withdraw to neutral space immediately. Kalmtar's response was predictable. This is Representative Kalmtar of the Hegemony Defense Force. Humans have no territorial claims in this region, and your defensive displays do not intimidate hegemony forces. You will stand down immediately or face the consequences. Chen's reply came without hesitation. Representative Kalmtar, you have 10 seconds to begin withdrawal, or we will demonstrate why that would be the wiser choice. The countdown timer appeared on every screen throughout both fleets. Kalmtar stared at it in disbelief. No primitive species had ever issued ultimatums to hegemony forces. When the timer reached 0, he was still struggling to process the audacity of the human demand. What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations. The humans didn't attack the hegemony fleet directly. Instead, they targeted a barren asteroid approximately 1,000 kilometers from Kalmtar's position. The weapon that struck it wasn't a conventional energy beam or missile. It was something that seemed to reach across space and simply delete matter from existence. The asteroid, roughly 10 kilometers in diameter, vanished completely. No explosion, no debris field, no energy discharge, just instantaneous transition from existence to void. Tactical analysis, Kalmtar demanded, his voice barely controlled. Sir, there's nothing to analyze. The asteroid is simply gone. Complete matter conversion with no detectable energy release. This represents technology beyond anything in our theoretical models. A second asteroid suffered the same fate, followed by a third. Each demonstration was precise, controlled, and absolutely terrifying in its implications. If humans could delete matter at will, no shield technology or armor configuration could provide protection. Chen's voice returned. Representative Kalmtar, we can continue these demonstrations, or you can accept that humanity has developed defensive capabilities sufficient to protect our territory. The choice is yours. Kalmtar found himself facing the unthinkable, a military force that clearly possessed technological superiority over hegemony fleets. His entire worldview, built on centuries of unchallenged galactic dominance, crumbled as he watched weapons that violated his understanding of physics casually eliminate massive objects. Sir, his tactical officer whispered, recommend immediate withdrawal. These weapons could eliminate our entire fleet without difficulty. For the first time in his military career, Representative Kalmtar was forced to consider retreat without firing a shot. The implications for hegemony authority were staggering, but the alternative, the complete destruction of his fleet, was unacceptable. All ships, he ordered, his voice tight with suppressed rage. Withdraw to previous position. Maintain defensive formation. As the hegemony fleet began its withdrawal, Admiral Chen opened a direct communication channel to Admiral Kethvar. Admiral, I believe we've successfully demonstrated humanity's defensive capabilities. Perhaps Representative Kalmtar would be interested in joining our diplomatic discussions. The aftermath of the confrontation sent shockwaves throughout galactic civilization. Within hours, reports of humanity's revealed capabilities reached every major power in the galaxy. Species that had dismissed humans as primitive upstarts suddenly found themselves reevaluating their assumptions about galactic power structures. In the weeks that followed, diplomatic missions from dozens of civilizations arrived at human border stations. Some came seeking alliance and trade agreements. Others came to assess whether humanity represented opportunity or threat. All came with a new respect for the species that had emerged from the shadows to challenge the established order. The Hegemony Council found itself facing a choice that would define the future of galactic civilization. They could attempt to maintain their traditional dominance through military force, risking a war against an opponent with clearly superior technology. Or they could adapt to a new reality, where humanity demanded recognition as an equal partner in galactic affairs. Admiral Kethvar, whose initial encounter with human military capabilities had triggered the entire crisis, found himself appointed as the primary hegemony ambassador to humanity. His mission was to negotiate new agreements that acknowledged both species' legitimate interests.